So officially, welcome everyone. For those of you that know me in the cohort, I'm so glad to see you here. For those of you that don't know me or renew, welcome to a fundraising workshop. We're really excited in just a moment to welcome Connor Farrell of Left Rising to talk all things fundraising with us, a tiny bit about what we're doing. A lot of the folks in this program, or I should say in this session tonight, are part of our campaign manager cohort. We're working with a little over 100 potential campaign managers over the past now 7 weeks. They have about 2 weeks left, and we're currently in the process of recruiting for our next cohort, which starts February 1st. I want to drop our one pager in the chat because I don't want to take too much time away from it. If you know anyone that might be interested in joining a future cohort or next cohort, we're going to have a lot of classes much like this throughout the month of January so they can get a taste of our style as Renew. And we do have, like I said, that new cohort starting February 1st. For current cohort members, a quick announcement. We have a 3-way tie for first place for the recruitment challenge that we're currently under. 3-way tie for Monty, Courtney, and Joseph Brinkley. So you are all 3 in first for recruitment. And then we also have referrals pending applications from Drake Duffer, Annie Jump, and Tara Rose, coming to snatch that top spot from y'all. That is a message from Frida. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you're in the cohort, definitely look at Frida's message in the announcement tab. And I think that is all of the housekeeping that I have. So I want everyone to give a woo, give a welcome, give all the things in the chat to our special guest tonight, Connor Farrell with Left Rising. Thank you so much for joining us, Connor. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks, everyone. Very nice to be here. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us. Oh shoot, I just clicked the remove spotlight. I don't know if that's just for me or for everyone. Oh well. Yeah, appreciate like all the work that you're doing to get good progressives elected. I'm excited to talk fundraising with you. Just for my edification and context. So how about we just do a little survey here? Can you drop in the chat or give me a wave if you're currently planning on running or think you might be a candidate in the near future? Potential candidate, future candidate, just a yes. Okay, I see a few hand waves. And how about staff? If you are planning on working on a campaign, either manager, some sort of other staffer, like how about, yeah, thumbs up. All right. So we got some staff here, cool. Okay, good. Well, let's talk about fundraising. I do have a presentation, and tonight we'll kind of, because everyone's at different stages and some people are planning on running, some people are planning on working on a campaign, there are different types of campaigns. We're kind of going to cover like all the basics of raising money. So we're not going to go too deep into any one particular style or method, but we will cover like some of the best practices on all the major avenues for raising money. So things like call time, events, we'll talk about writing and managing a finance plan so you can actually keep your campaign on budget and not send it into debt or underspend, which can be just as bad. We'll talk a little bit about staffing and then also how we raise money ethically, since we do want to do that. We don't want to take evil money to run our campaigns. So cool. Let me share some slides here. Give me just a moment. All right. 1 second. Of course, the slides are never where you want them when you need them. All right. All right, here we go. Part 1. Okay. Great. Let me just share my screen now. Share screen. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Give me a thumbs up or a little wave if you can. Yeah. All right. Great. Cool. Okay. So, raising money. Who needs it, right? We can just run a campaign without any money. No, just kidding. Okay. So, what do you need money for? I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, like to say that you need to tell people why you need money, or it seems obvious, I guess, but you actually do need to tell people why you need money to run a campaign. You need to hire people, you've got to organize, you need supplies, you need to communicate with voters in the form of advertising, you need to hold rallies, you got to get out the vote. What are some other things you need money for on a campaign? Just open question to the room. You can drop it in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. What do we need money for? Materials, yes, banners, posters, rally signs, buttons, merch, swag. Raise more money. That's right, you got to spend it to raise it. Very true. Lit van. Can't do anything without the voter file. War chest, yep. Look viable, that's right. You do have to show people that you're a real campaign, and raising money is probably, it's not the only thing people look at to judge the viability of a campaign, but it is certainly the first and one of the most constant. So having good fundraising quarter over quarter, month over month, or whatever the period is where you're running, that is really important. It's an important signal to your allies. It's an important signal to your opponents that you're to be taken seriously. And it can, there's a saying at Emily's List, early money is like yeast. The earlier you raise it, the more it raises itself. So if you raise it early and you look good, you will find yourself raising more money later. All right. So, okay. Grassroots fundraising. Look, I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to say none of us here are going to be running massively corporate packed back campaigns, getting tens of thousands of dollars from particular industries. But so what is a grassroots fundraising style? Generally speaking, what we are talking about is raising money from people rather than PACs, especially corporate PACs. That's not to say all PACs are bad. There are plenty of good ones. A PAC is just an FEC or campaign finance designation in your state, allowing people to raise money in a different style. That being said, there are plenty of nefarious PACs out there, like NRA to Coke Industries, etc. Plenty of good ones, like Planned Parenthood is a PAC, or they have a PAC. It also refers to the volume of donations, so having a lot of people giving multiple times rather than, say, a few people giving a few times. There are some states where there are no campaign finance limits. So in Virginia, for example, Glenn Youngkin raised, I don't know, $40 million or something, and he had a number of donors who gave, over six figures, so like $100,000, $500,000, including corporations. And he gave himself 20 million. So may we all be so fortunate someday. But I would not describe that as grassroots fundraising at all. It's probably the absolute opposite of grassroots fundraising. So that's a big part of it. The reality of modern campaigns is you do need a lot of money to be competitive. you don't need the most money as a progressive or grassroots candidates, but you do need enough money, enough to be competitive, enough to pay for the essential things that your campaign needs, like we just talked about, staff, rallies, etc. And in order to do that, you need to spend a lot of time doing it. It takes more time to raise $1,000 from 10 people than it does to raise $1,000 from one person. So you should plan on spending roughly 50 to 60% of your time fundraising if you are a candidate, or if you are, a finance staffer, that will be close to 100% of your time. So let's keep going. Okay, where does money come from? What we have here is a graphic commonly referred to as the 5 circles of political fundraising, also known as the circles of benefit. So in the middle, you will see that oftentimes the very first bit of money comes from the candidate themselves. Maybe they've got to chip in a couple $100, $1,000 to pay for some initial costs, whether that's putting a few bucks in a bank to open a bank account for the campaign, to make an early staff hire, to pay for a website is a very common early expense. So that is the very first one. Wardrobe, yes, got to be looking sharp on the trail, absolutely. The 2 arrows are meant to indicate time and viability, either progressing or increasing. So as you get closer and closer to the election, the places you raise money from will change a little bit. And ideally, your campaign is getting more viable too. So the next circle is your personal circle. And here I just have some examples here instead of the graphic. So this would be, your church group, your coworkers, people you met at the gym, maybe you're in a soccer league, extended family and friends, college roommates, grade school teachers, like literally every person that a candidate has ever met who they think would support them in their endeavor makes up their personal network. And if you are running for office, you should have a lot of people who believe in you and want to support you, or at the very least, you can convince to support you. That's a great measure of whether or not someone is poised to be successful. Do they have lots of people willing to help them out? So that's sort of the underlying theory behind why people judge fundraising why fundraising is such a key metric for potential success. Is you've got just people who are willing to support you. Ideological circle. So this would be depending on where you're running and the types of issues you're running on. Perhaps you're running as a gun violence prevention candidate. Things like Everytown, Moms Demand Action would be ideological groups from which you could raise money. If you are Jessica Cisneros in Texas running against Henry Cuellar for Congress, he's one of the last anti-choice Democrats in Congress. Groups like Planned Parenthood would be an ideological, a part of that ideological circle, and the individual donors who care about those issues are part of that circle too. So not just organizations. As we get further out and closer to the election, the axe to grind circle, I think I spelled axe wrong there, is basically people who hate your opponent, is the simplest way to put it. They have something to gain from seeing your opponent defeated. So I'm trying to think of a good example. So in Rhode Island right now, obviously there's a sleep out. Matt and Cynthia are trying to convince the governor to do the right thing and solve the housing crisis. I would say that the groups involved in that who want to see a more fair and just housing policy kind of fit both ideological and the axe to grind circle. They certainly want to see, either the governor defeated or at least someone with a better position on their issues in office. And yeah, so that's the axe to grind. And sometimes, that it sounds silly, but that circle can include people who have personal beef with your opponent. In my very first race in 2014, we had a donor who was neighbors with the congressman we were challenging, and literally just didn't like him as a person. He was like, I think Fred, the incumbent, is called him a a-hole, and he just wanted to see him defeated. So he had an axe to grind. That's why it's called that. And lastly is the power circle. A lot of corporations in this circle, so people who have a lot to gain by seeing you elected, like have a vested power interest in seeing you elected or your opponent defeated. Obviously, there's some interplay between all these circles, but a great example would be, Wall Street wanting to see a pro banking person elected, so that person will further deregulate the industry and they can make more money. Same goes for big oil, pharma, etc. But there are people who can gain power by seeing progressives elected. So maybe that's like housing champions in Rhode Island. Okay, so those are the 5 circles. I think in the future, if you ever take a fundraising course again, or see some training materials, you'll probably see this graph in a number of places. Okay, let us keep going. Okay, so where do all these people come from? How do we find them? Because if we're gonna get them to donate to our campaign, we do have to find them. So the personal network is the easiest. It's the first place you start. Essentially, you want to get every network and trove of data you can imagine in one place. So this is things like exporting all your iPhone contacts, which you can Google how to do, or email me, I have a guide. All of your Google contacts from your Gmail. Your Facebook, a little harder to export. Your LinkedIn, old yearbooks, membership directories, mailing lists. If you do a holiday card and you have a mailing list, all your family members, old buddies, all of that is a great place to start building your personal Rolodex. And you would be shocked at how many people even if you haven't talked to them in 5, 10, 50 years, people will remember you and they will probably donate. So there's no person out there or in your past for you not to call and tell them about what you're trying to accomplish. Moving beyond the personal network, once we start talking about like ideological donors or donors in the axe to grind and power circles, a lot of that research takes place in what we would call campaign finance reports. So if you're running for office multiple times, you're going to have to file either with your Secretary of State, your county clerk, or the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, how much money you're raising, where it's coming from, and what you're spending it on. And those reports remain public basically forever. So, which is great. We love transparency in campaign finance. We don't like dark money. So that is also true for political orgs like PACs, super PACs, etc. So just calling back to one of the earlier examples, if you're Jessica Cisneros running against Henry Cuellar, you're pro-choice, he's anti-choice, you might look for donors to other pro-choice candidates in your state. So getting a little in the weeds, but like Wendy Davis famously ran in Texas, very pro-choice. I think that was 2014. She ran for governor. And she was, I don't know, Republicans tried to call her abortion Barbie because she was pro-choice, which was a horrible slander. But she got a lot of money from people who care about abortion rights. And she ran on that issue and glad that she did. So that's a good example of like an alignment for donors. I would say other things, if you're running on climate issues a lot, like there are a lot of organizations that have to report their donors in the climate space, things like 350.org, the Sierra Club, NextGen, like all of these people giving to those organizations, generally speaking, probably care about the issues that you care about. You can find a lot of state level candidates on the various secretaries of state. So like Matt and Cynthia will report to the Rhode Island Secretary of State when they file their reports. Ideological groups can be a little different just because they may not necessarily be a PAC or something that reports in that manner. Like they may be a charity or like a nonprofit association. So they may make more sense to call through like board members or to look at like membership directories or featured speakers or something. Like you just have to do a little bit more research there to get into the ideological groups. Okay, tell you what, let me stop there for just a second. Oops. And see if anyone has any questions. I'm also just gonna grab some water really quick. So go ahead, and if you have any questions at this point, pop them in the chat and I'll be back in 30 seconds. Cool. All right, let's see here. Yeah, great question. How many people have fundraised before? I can see a couple yeses. Only had 2 weeks. That's not too much time. Let's see. All right, nonprofits, like it. Oh, good question. How do you get phone numbers for people? So phone numbers, the phone book is a public directory. People don't really have actual physical phone books anymore, but you can use like whitepages.com or there are a number of other free services, Fast People Search. All of those draw from like the same publicly available commercial information, like just the phone book. But a great source locally for phone numbers is when you get VAN or the voter file. That has a lot of phone numbers and pretty good ones because they're collected by people like you and me who get someone's phone number and put it in the VAN so it can stay there and be accurate. So yeah. Yep. Let's see. Should you always be fundraising as a company or when there are events/issues? So Londa, what did you mean by that? Fundraising as a company or when there are events issues? Well, we can come back to it. Sure, yeah. There are a few professions where people can't donate. For the most part, that is only people who work in finance with respect to state level campaigns. So if you manage public money, like you manage investments for a pension fund, there are rules prohibiting you from donating to candidates for office in the state where the pension fund exists, because they would think you have like undue influence over the investments. So it's a pretty small subset, but there are some people in finance who can't donate. So, you know, if they can't, they'll just tell you they can't, and you move on. Oh, journalists. I think that's often a case-by-case basis. Generally speaking, they do not donate. Journalists. That is one of the few others. Yeah. But some do, and like employees of news outlets can donate, like non-journalist employees, I think. Okay. All right. Let's tell you what, let's keep going. All right. We'll come back to some of these questions here. Okay. Where do donors give by amount? So small dollar donors, what we would generally call grassroots donors, what are they doing? They're giving online, they're giving on social media, they're giving by email. They give a lot, many times. So they might give like every time you email, or every other email, or every time they come to one of your events. Medium dollar donors, a lot of times these are people in your personal network, especially if you have like friends in the workforce. Like these are just regular folks giving you 50, 100 bucks at a time. They do it when you give a phone call, sometimes by email. They like coming to events. Large dollar donors really can be found anywhere. They'll give at events via call time, sometimes by email too. Like you would be surprised how often that happens. So this is just a little peek at like where the different segments of donors are giving and what their preferred methods are. All right, let's talk about actually making some phone calls to people. So I think call time is probably the big scary thing that candidates and staff get a little hung up on, like the idea of having to sit and call a bunch of people and ask them for money. I don't think anyone has ever woken up in the morning and said, gosh, I really can't wait to do that. Really can't wait. But it's necessary, and you'll find that people are generally very polite, very helpful, very willing to listen to you. It's just not in our nature to be mad at someone for asking for help. It's just we're helpful people, so you just got to dive into it. A few tips here. Excuse me. Number one, take detailed notes. It is physically impossible for you to remember every conversation you have with people just in your head, and you will forget things, you'll get it mixed up. So take a note of every call that you make. Try to group the results into particular buckets. So if you leave a message for someone, that's a bucket. You've got a bunch of people you left messages for. If someone says, yes, I'll donate, they pledge to donate, that's a bucket, that's a pledge. Someone says, hey, let me think about it, I'm not sure, I need to do my research, let me look at your website, that's like a maybe, that's a bucket. You can send them some materials, maybe one of your positions on an issue, and come back to them. Wrong number, very rare, but a straight up refusal. No, I'm actually a Republican, sorry you didn't know that about me, or whatever, that happens. A referral, sometimes someone says, hey, I'm a good example would be the people who work in certain parts of finance. I can't donate because the rules prevent me, but you should talk to my cousin, she's very political and loves the issues you're running on. That's a referral. And then lastly, you should be doing calls to build if you're having events, and whether or not someone can come to an event is also a call response. Very important to send timely follow-ups. So I see a question from Bernard, like, once a donation is received, how should we handle it? Number one, acknowledge it. Send them a thank you. Even if it's just a quick text or an email, just let them know, hey, Really appreciate the support. Talk to you soon. It really goes a long way. You don't necessarily have to send them like a form letter with a signature and an envelope. Just let them know you got it and you appreciate it. If someone is looking for like the website or more info, that's a follow-up. You want to do those same day, make sure people are getting the information they want right away. Or if they're trying, scheduling you for the future, like I can't talk right now. Why don't we meet up for coffee on Wednesday? Like, go ahead and get that scheduled quickly. And the people you want to be calling are current donors, anyone who's given to you already, or if you're just starting out, all of your prospective donors, which is another word for like possible donors. So all the people in your personal network, anyone that's been referred to you, things like that. And then lastly, if you're doing event calls, that's another universe. So there we have some basics on call time. It really is not as scary as people think. I have found that people enjoy getting to go back and talk to people they haven't spoken to in a number of years, like an old friend from grade school, get to catch up. I mean, how often do you get to talk to someone you haven't talked to in like 10 years? It's kind of nice. Then you ask them for money. All right, email. So this one's a little tricky. There's kind of a split between how smaller local campaigns do email and how larger campaigns like I don't know, John Fetterman or something does email. Phase one is what I would call doing it in-house. So this is the campaign team, you, me, your staff, just you, whoever, getting all your contacts together and putting it into a MailChimp or a little more political oriented service like NGP, which is the finance side of NGP Van, and send it, writing and sending emails yourself from NGP to your personal contacts and people in your network. For a lot of campaigns, that's the way it will be from start to finish, which is totally fine. Like, it's not that many people raise tons of money by email, but it's a good way to like keep people engaged, to raise a little bit of money, good way to make sure you're staying in people's inboxes. So if you're calling them, like they forgot, they meant to give you $200 last Friday, but they get your email about an upcoming event, it's, just a great nudge that you don't necessarily have to call them again. So the larger campaigns, or if your campaign progresses and is in a position to hire a digital firm to help raise money, this would be like what we call a paid growth, paid acquisition phase of email. A lot of digital firms charge anywhere from like $5,000 to $10,000 a month, and you have to be investing in acquisition. So that essentially means like buying or renting names to send to. This is really like, I would say, for congressional and above. So like congressional or statewide campaigns, maybe some larger state legislative campaigns, like a state Senate race in a particularly large area. So if you're doing that, you work with a digital firm, they will help you do things like petitions, joint actions. If you've ever gotten an email that says like sign on to call on Susan Collins to oppose Brett Kavanaugh or whatever, like that's a joint action usually. Swapping email names with various partners, or you give them some emails, they give you some emails, renting them. Those are all the emails you get where it's like chip in now, books close at midnight, yada yada. So it's not necessarily the right fit for everyone. It does cost a lot, but if you're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're in a place where it makes sense for you to do that, it is a good way to continue to raise even more money. So in-house email, paid email. Okay. What's next here? Email timing. There's no best time of day to send an email. Anytime works. Okay. Season, all the time. If you're running for office, you should be emailing like once or twice a week, people on your list. Any time of year, any time of day. Yep. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about, like paid ads and such. Just when people refer to digital, usually there's two types of digital we think about. There's fundraising digital and there's persuasion digital. So fundraising digital obviously is like the emails that we were just talking about, some fundraising ads, and then persuasion comes later, which is advertising. So when you are ready to like convince people to vote for you in the closing days of your campaign and you spend money on ads, that's like a persuasion ad, vote for me over the other person. Acquisition is like on the previous slide, gathering and collecting emails is generally referred to as acquisition. There is another way of raising money, and I see a question about it, which are donate ads. Probably most of us have been served a donate ad on Facebook where it says like, breaking, there's a new poll that shows Raphael Warnock is leading David Perdue or whoever, chip in here to help us control the Senate or something along those lines. That's a donate ad. They're generally more successful for people who have like existing name ID. Like if I just got an ad for a state rep candidate in a state I don't live in, like it would be very unusual for me to understand who that is. And there's not a whole lot of space to like convince someone. You're asking a lot of them to like read an ad, right? And it costs money to like show it a lot. So usually those are for like Senate campaigns, congressional campaigns, presidential. But if you're on one of those, that's a great place to do some donate ads. And generally speaking, the return on your investment is something like 120%. So if you spend $1, you would raise $1.20, and you do that over and over and over many times a day, sometimes thousands of times a day. So not right for everyone, but right for some people. Yeah, daily Kos content. So the question is, what about using daily Kos content? For those that don't know, like Daily Kos is a political blog where users can also submit articles or pieces about certain races or topics. Yeah, I think if you're running, like putting something up on Daily Kos about your race and why it's important and why people should donate is a great idea. It might not get 1 million readers, but some people will probably read it, care about it, and donate. So the more places you can get your message out there, the better. Okay, let's talk another method here, which is physical mail, snail mail, as I like to call it, in an envelope. Look, some people you can't reach on the phone. They don't answer phone calls. They don't reply to your emails. Some people just prefer it. Like I know at the end of the year, my parents sit down and at the kitchen table and get their checkbook out and write a $25 check to like the Humane Society and a few other places. And that's like how they do some of their donating. So a piece of mail can be a really helpful part of a mix of fundraising solicitations. And same as for email, it can be a nice way to nudge someone who you've either talked to on the phone or has gotten an email or something like that. Like it doesn't have to just be one channel. So this, usually would be everyone in your personal network, and you want to do it around what we call a key moment. So a deadline, your opponent doing something horrible or notable, or maybe you've gotten some media coverage, like an announcement about launching your campaign, the end of a quarter or a filing period. All of these are great forcing moments for a mailer. and for your other fundraising methods too. There are some paid direct mail fundraising firms, very few. And they mostly work with like Senate races and presidential. They mail thousands and thousands of people, and it costs thousands and thousands of dollars, and you make about half your money back right away. But over the long term, you know, those people can be called, they can be texted, they can be invited to events, and eventually you make more than 100% of your money back. Pretty rare and kind of a falling out of fashion as a fundraising method. More stuff is moving to digital, but they do still exist. And if that's the right thing for you to try, then go for it. But I've been on maybe 20 campaigns, and I think only 5 of them have used a paid mail house. So it is pretty uncommon. Okie doke. Let's talk fundraising events. I'm going to kind of go a little quickly here because we have some more in-depth things I do want to try to get to. Okay, if you're running for office, it is a good thing to get a bunch of your supporters together in a room talking about why they support you. You can give a speech, you can sign people up to volunteer, you can collect donations, you can collect contact information. Events are awesome. They are a lot of work. You've got to get a venue, you've got to write a speech, you got to get people there, you got to sign them in, you got to keep them focused, you got to make sure there's food at the event. Ideally, you have people who can help host, so people in your network who are willing to open their homes and put out some wine and cheese or whatever. You can pay for a venue, but you want to make sure that if you're doing that, you have hosts who are committed to helping raise money, so you don't actually lose money on the event, because a lot of venues can be, $1,000 or more, right? Like a restaurant. So those are 2 types of events. All right, here are some things on an event invite that I think are important to talk about. This was a paper invite, but it could have just as easily been an email or a text message with some of the key pieces. So are there hosts? Like, whose names are we putting on it? Who's hosting you, if anyone? Those are here at the top. I've just blocked out the last names for privacy. Who are you? What is the campaign? Are you running for county exec? You're running for state rep, city council? Where is it? What time is it? Address? You'd be surprised how often people forget to read this and will text you 20 minutes before the event. Where is this thing? A link to donate. So I think most of us, if we're on a campaign, will be using ActBlue. You can make a specific event page, and then either an amount to host or an amount to attend or a suggested donation, and then whatever disclaimer your local rules require. Like in this thing in Michigan, we have to say, paid for by this campaign. Here's the address of the campaign. And then, questions, who to contact. That can just be anyone's contact information. But you do want to make sure that all of these things are on there. All very important. All right. So what are some other methods of raising money that we haven't talked about? Bundlers. Who's heard the term bundler before? Yeah, usually kind of a weird term that seems a little strange. Maybe we have heard of it, but don't quite know. Oh, we know several. Oh, well. Montgomery, stay close to those bundlers. Basically, a bundler is someone who agrees to go out and raise money for you or your campaign or organization, right? So like, you're running for state rep. Hey, I need you to raise me $2,500. And if you can get a few of those people, that will make your fundraising effort a lot easier. I think a lot of bundlers in New York. I think the number one thing to keep in mind about a bundler is really anyone can do it. The key is they need to be motivated. They have to be excited. So, in the course of my fundraising, like I've met a few bundlers for different candidates. But just because I know them doesn't necessarily mean if I were to run for office tomorrow, they'd be interested in supporting me or raising money for me. So anyone can be a bundler. On my first campaign, our candidate's mom bundled quite a bit of money for him, like maybe $10,000 or $20,000, and she did it at her fundraising committee. That's another name for it. Finance committee, fundraising committee, bundlers. She did it at her bingo club often. So every time she went to play bingo on Friday, she would take donation envelopes with her, tell people about her son and why he was running, and they would say, "Oh, that's nice." And if they want a little money at bingo, they would donate. Just watch the rules around cash donations wherever you're running. So anyone can do it. You just want them to be motivated. So they should know you well. They should care about you. They should want to see you succeed. They should care about the office you're running for. All good things. Or potentially in the outer circles, they should have a very vested interest in seeing you elected. So maybe they want to see you elected because they hate your opponent. PAC and labor, a lot of folks on the Democratic side run with the support of labor organizations, labor unions. Those are very often organizations that donate pretty prolifically. Various PACs issue or ideological PACs, all the ones we've mentioned, they all have an ability to give money usually. Allies, so there are ideological groups like the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, Justice Democrats, things like that, who will raise money directly to a campaign, but not like a bundler, more like using the power of their email list or social media. Allies who can raise money online for you. Finance committee. A lot of times the finance committee is just a group of bundlers or event hosts who meet regularly with you in the campaign to like get updates, see how they can be helpful, talk about making introductions to other people they know, etc. And then lastly, merch is just a great thing. There's a lot of online merch stores that can help you with your campaign. And so you can sell t-shirts, sell them for $25, they cost 20. Boom, you've made $5. And people will hopefully wear it around and you get a little bit of free advertising out of it. All right. Okay, so you're on a campaign, you're running. Do I need staff? How much staff do I need? Who are the people? What do they do? Do I do it all myself? I think it's important to think about a few different setups for the campaign. Some campaigns, many campaigns, most campaigns statistically don't raise that much money. There are way more city council seats in America than there are congressional seats, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of city council seats across the country. Maybe even more, I have no idea. Someone should count up all the city council seats in the country. That would be amazing, probably 1 million. There's only 435 congressional seats. So most campaigns are pretty scrappy. A lot of times it's just the candidate and a committed volunteer, like a friend, spouse, something like that for the majority of the time, or maybe one paid staffer who's in a manager or like assistant role. Those campaigns usually raising less than $100,000 total. And that is totally fine. Like we said before, you don't need the most amount of money, you just need enough. And in that case, I think, you're doing your email in-house. You don't need paid staff. You just need to put in the time and effort to be successful. Campaigns with finance directors, a lot of times this is like a first or second hire, either before or after a manager. This is anyone raising more than $100,000 probably has a finance director, maybe 200,000. This person is helping do donor research, organizing your contacts, putting together events, maybe writing and sending emails, staffing your call time, really doing a lot of the organizational work to make all the different channels of fundraising a success. So if you're in a race where you think you need to raise this amount and you think you could do it, it's worth your while to look for a campaign staffer with some finance experience or just training. So that I would say is usually more like large city councils, state legislate, state rep, state senate, small congressional. A lot of those have like one finance staffer or finance director. Larger campaigns, more in the $500,000 range, so like state senate, congressional, or some down ballot statewide, like Secretary of State. Those would have a few specialized roles. So one person would just be in charge of building and managing events. One person would just be doing call time. And then maybe one person kind of doing all of the above, like jack of all trades player on your team, right? So maybe they're doing like a little bit of data entry, doing staffing the front desk at an event, helping staff some call time, like a little bit of everything. Good rule of thumb from the beginning, you probably want a staffer for every 500,000 to $1 million that you think you need to raise. So if you're planning on raising $10 million or something, you need a very large finance department. But under that, you could probably make do with yourself or like one staffer. All right. Okay. Let's talk about not breaking the law a little bit. That's an important one. Campaign contribution limits come in two types. They come in amount. So do not take more than you are allowed to. Local offices generally have a very low contribution limit, sometimes like $500. So city council, state rep. Federal races, the limit this year is $2,900 per election. So that for the primary, $2,900 for the general. Some states have higher limits, like statewide races in Michigan, where I'm from, the limit is $7,150 this year. In New York, I think the limit is something like $32,000. And then in some places like Texas, Virginia, South Dakota, a couple other places, there's no limit on amount. So one person could write a $1 million check, and sometimes it happens. That's not a good thing. The other limit is on the source of the funds. So I think everyone knows that in most cases, corporations cannot donate. That's not true in like Texas and Virginia, but federally, locally, usually a corporation cannot donate. If and when you're running or you're on a campaign, check with your local election body, like your clerk or your Secretary of State, and they'll always have a candidate guide that lays out where you can accept money from and where you cannot. It's part of like every Secretary of State office, every county clerk, they all have them. LLCs, PLLCs, partnerships, it kind of depends. Some places you can, some places you cannot. It really just depends. And sometimes it depends how an LLC is taxed. So like federally, if it's an S Corp, yes, you can take it. If it's a C Corp, no, you cannot. And again, just check with your election regulatory body. The FEC is actually a pretty well-staffed, good organization that you can just call and ask questions and they'll answer them. For the most part, people need to be US citizens or permanent residents, aka green card holder, and they need to not be minors. Although there are some circumstances with like a parent's note where you can take money from minors. And then lastly, PACs, party committees, like your state party, you can take money there. Charities like a 501c3, you cannot take money from usually. And then unions, yes. Question in the chat, sole proprietorship, partnership, LLC, generally, yes, you can take that. It does depend, and I'm not a lawyer, it does depend where you're running and what the local laws are, but like federally, for example, yes, the sole proprietorship, you can accept funds for that. Okay. Let's talk about ethical fundraising. Progressives, we have some attitudes about money in politics, most of them good. I always like to say fundraising is a good thing. We are all trying to do the right thing and fight for the kind of change we want in the world. And in order to get there, we've got to raise money. So you should never feel bad about raising money. It is a good thing. People will want to help you. Very good. It also has other benefits, like brings people into the political process. Some people you'll talk to, or most people you probably talk to, are not political, like your cousin or your mom or whoever. But once they donate to you, they'll follow your campaign. They'll become interested. They will see the issues you're fighting about. They will probably start to care about them if they hadn't already. So fundraising is a good thing. I try not to pass too much judgment on raising large amounts of money versus small amounts of money. Rich people are people too, I like to say. But if you have a wealthy donor who wants to give you money, that is not in itself a bad thing. There are some exceptions, which we'll talk about in a second, that you might want to think about. But some people donate their time, some people donate their money. You know, if you are fighting to end corporate monopolies and someone who works at Facebook wants to give you $1,000 to help do that, like, you should take it. Generally, because they want to see the same change that you do. So within that framework, though, I think there are some pledges and some industries you might want to think about sort of putting on a no-no list. Yeah, don't take Mark Zuckerberg's money. You can't never take money bigger than the limits. You will get in trouble. You'll have to return it. Don't do it. So there are a number of pledges out there. Most of them are federal. So there's like, I think a lot of us are probably familiar with the Sunrise organization. They have a very clear pledge about candidates not taking contributions of $500 or more from executives of fossil fuel industries, fossil fuel companies. Got it. Pretty clear. Most campaigns I've worked with sign the Sunrise Pledge. We want to get fossil fuel money out of politics. Makes sense. Ultimately, it's totally up to you and your campaign, what you want to do. You're the one that has to live with how you decide to campaign. There are some other ones, you know, depending on where you live, like not every candidate in Texas takes the Sunrise Pledge because energy is a huge industry there. Some candidates have sworn off money from people who work in the pharmaceutical industry or the weapons manufacturing industry, all things to think about. It's up to you. But those are just some examples. Okay, average contribution. I think we have all probably seen people brag about their average contribution. Mine's $19, $27, $23, $44. Does it matter? For some campaigns, yes. For larger campaigns, it can become an issue. It can be brought up in debates. Smaller campaigns, not really. The smaller your campaign, the higher your average contribution is going to be, probably. Because if you are only getting money from like 75 people, just by the law of averages, it's going to be a little higher than if you are getting money from 400,000 people, like Raphael Warnock or something. So something to keep an eye on. You should always encourage people to give multiple times, give at events, give by email. All that will help bring down your contribution. But I don't think there's anything inherently bad if you are raising money ethically and your average contribution is like $200, right? We're not Glenn Youngkin here. Our average contribution isn't like $30,000 or something. So something to keep in mind. Yeah, good point from Bernard. The reporting, you wanna be diligent about filing your reports, filing them on time, keeping in contact with your local election authority. Most clerks, secretaries of state, if you're filing late or you're missing things, you can incur fines. You can get notices of errors or omissions. People might use it against you. So it's something you want to be on top of regularly. All right, we're going to skip the breakout session, but we are going to take just a little 5-minute break, I think. Okay, in the next session, we're going to go over a few little more advanced things around a finance plan, some donor research, how to measure success and call time, and a little bit more on the events front, just to get a little more into the key areas. So yeah, Jen, are we good to take maybe just a couple-minute break so I can chug some water?
Absolutely. 5 minutes good?
Yeah, 5 minutes is great.
All right. If anyone has questions, feel free to drop those questions and let's take a solid 5.
All right, let me share my screen. Welcome back, welcome back. Here we go, season 2, better than the first season. Rotten Tomatoes says certified fresh. All right, let us talk a little more advanced about fundraising. Okay. We're going to go into just a little bit call time, donor research, event management, and a finance plan. Really the core activities of finance. Setting up call time. It'll be a little harder here to differentiate between what a larger campaign operation looks like and a smaller campaign, but some of the overall themes and best practices are pretty applicable. So setting up call time. You've got to make calls for money. It's going to happen if you want to raise money. Here's a tip. Do it somewhere other than where you are usually. Don't do it in your bedroom. What you want is like a dedicated space that is free of distractions, peaceful, quiet, has good cell phone reception. We call it the bird cage. Maybe a little window so you can see outside. You want your phone, you want call sheets or whatever method you're using. So if that's like a notebook, a spreadsheet, ideally a database like NGP or Excel, and you want pens or take notes in the database with lots and lots of detail. So a dedicated call time room, maybe with some snacks or chocolate if you like to reward yourself that way. but a separate space. Doesn't have to necessarily be a separate room, but a separate space. So different table than where you usually work. Because what you're really trying to avoid is distractions from your cell phone, from your notifications going off on your computer, your friends and family bothering you, anything like that. Like, it's just got to be just a separate space. Yes, good call time habits. That's right. All right. Now, this particular example is a call sheet, like a physical piece of paper, which is how campaigns used to operate for a very long time, and many still do. There is definitely a move towards, if you're doing a lot of call time, towards doing it strictly digitally, so all in a spreadsheet or all in an automatic dialer, but all of the information is the same. And so I just want to talk about like the things that you should see and be keeping track of in your call time program. Okay, so this is like a donor profile, a contact sheet for one person that a 2014 candidate was calling, Clements for Congress. He ran against Fred Upton, terrible Republican. Okay, so Robert, whose name I've redacted, lives in Kalamazoo. Here's his phone number. Here's his email. This particular call sheet was made in NGP. Other key pieces of information: occupation and employer. This is someone the candidate knew, but not well, so we did some research on this person. In NGP, there were some codes to help organize this person. So like he was on the original email list. So like that's a code that is used in this particular database. Probably not going to be a lot of coding that you're doing, but sometimes. So like pledge could be a code, like if this person pledged at one point. Okay, other things. So this person contributed in May of 2014. How much? Who to? This is us. This is contributions to this campaign here. And then, oops, down at the bottom, you have a lot of call notes. And just want to direct your attention to the very bottom first. We have a wrong number, which was originally called, and we left it in there, so we didn't call it again and bother the same person again with the wrong number, because that's a little awkward when it happens. And then we have a donor history. So like I said, the candidate knew this person. I think maybe they were colleagues or something. And we wanted to get a sense of like, okay, we're running for Congress in Michigan. Does this person I know give a lot? How much do they give? How often? Who to? So we used the FEC and the Michigan Secretary of State website. We looked them up. We saw that they gave, going all the way back to the year 2000, to a state house campaign, to a congressional campaign, to Governor Granholm in 2006. Oh, there's a very progressive donation, Dennis Kucinich. And then like an attorney general campaign. So 6 to 7 of these are Democrats, one's a Republican, maybe they are neighbors with them or something. So a good donor history. This is a good donor, someone in this person's network who gives regularly, and we hit them up a number of times. Here is a thing I want to draw your attention to, however. All of these little notes here, 4/24, 4/30, 5/7, with these little acronyms, which are just shorthand. These are all times the candidate called this one person who they kind of know. So we left a message, 4/24, home, that's the H, left message, morning, LMM. You don't have to use, you can just write out left message, but we had someone who liked to use shorthand. So we left a message on 4/24. 6 days later, we left another message. A week after that, we left another message in the evening. A week after that, no answer, we called. 5 days after that, we called again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then on the 6th time we called this person, they gave. That's a lot. You have to call people a lot. And not surprisingly, this person probably gets a lot of calls since they've given to a number of campaigns. So don't be put off if you call someone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times and you haven't gotten a hold of them or they haven't given. Like, keep going. This person gave after the 6th call, and then we called them 1, 2, 3, 10 more times. This, I think, is we took them out for a while. I think this is a break in the year or something. Yeah, and then we called them the next year like 6 or 7 more times. I think, if I remember right, they gave once more. So yeah, just keep going. So these are all sort of the key pieces that exist on a call sheet or in a donor's profile in a database. All right. If you're staffing call time, this is how you're raising a majority of your money. These are some of the things you want to be keeping track of and looking at. So is there a campaign calendar? How much time are we putting on the calendar for fundraising? Meaning, how many hours do we have scheduled? And then how many are we completing? Scheduled versus actual. If you say you're going to do 20 hours of fundraising next week and you do 2, that is not good. You have wasted a lot of time and you're not focusing on fundraising. If you say you're going to do 10 and you do 10 or 9, that is much better than scheduling 20 and doing 2. So that is how we assess like the campaign's overall dedication to fundraising. It's how much are they scheduling, how much are we doing? When you're doing it, you want to be looking at, well, just to back up, you want to make the most of your time when you're doing this. Like I said, no one wakes up every morning dying to go raise money, but once you're there and you're doing it, go quickly, like don't dilly-dally. So how many calls are we making per hour is a very good metric. Are we making 2 calls per hour? That doesn't sound like very much. That sounds like maybe we're playing video games in between calls, or going for walks or finding some distraction, text messages, whatever. We should be making maybe 10 to 20 calls an hour. Okay, how many connections are we getting? That is a good measure of like how good the list is. If you're calling people you know who are in your network, you're going to be having a lot of connections. They recognize your phone number, they probably want to talk to you, they haven't heard from you in a while, etc. If you are just making cold calls, you're going to be connecting with like 5 to 10% of the people you dial, which is fine, but it just takes a lot longer. And then pledges and conversions. Pledges are obviously when someone agrees to give you money, you've asked them for money, and they say they will. A conversion rate is what percent of the people you speak to are going to give you money. So if you're calling your personal network, most of those people should be saying yes. If most of the people in your personal network are saying no, there are probably some larger underlying issues with the campaign. Why are people who know you well not supporting you in your run for office? That's going to be an important question. But generally speaking, they will. Because I'm sure you guys are all awesome. So yeah, just measuring, yep, could be your pitch. Usually that's a little more for cold donors, but you want to always be working on your pitch and working on your messaging. Pledges and conversions, good things to keep an eye on. If you're really working on a large finance program, you can get into the weeds about like certain lists having slightly better conversion rates, etc. But for your own, when you're just calling your personal network or it's just you and the candidate, just something to keep an eye on and less measuring. And then lastly, dollar per hour. If you are spending an hour and raising couple $100, it's a pretty good use of time, and you can use that to project out how much money you're going to raise over the course of the campaign, and also schedule the amount of time you need to hit your budget numbers. If you need to raise $10,000 and you're raising $1,000 an hour, go ahead and schedule 11 hours next week, and you will raise your $10,000. So there we go. All right. Yeah, probably a little in the weeds here, just on the metric tracking, but if you are doing a lot of call time, just to make it as efficient as possible, like these are some things you can track in an example of like what a tracker would look like, and it just gives you some extra data to look at week to week, so you can assess like what's successful, what's not. Are we having a good connection rate? Are we getting a lot of yeses? So here's what that would look like, and it's sort of all broken out by week. Scheduled hours, actual hours, number of calls, how many connections you're getting, how much people are pledging, then at the very end, like dollars per hour. So in this case, this person is raising $550 an hour, which is great. Okay, so I mentioned doing prompt follow-up previously. When you speak to someone and they're willing to give you money, follow up right away. Don't let them forget. Don't wait several days to give them a way to do it. So this is an example of an email you might send to someone right after speaking to them, and they say, oh yeah, sounds great, I'm in. So basically this is from staff. It's to the donor. It says, thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Our campaign is going well. We're poised to, take out this horrible Republican. Here's a link to donate. Call if you have questions. Thank you so much. Quick, simple, straight to the point, and most importantly, has a donate link, and also mentions the amount that they pledged, because sometimes people forget that, so you want to remind them. Doesn't need to have any fancy bells and whistles, just thanks for speaking, here's a link to donate. Okay, after you have, we talked about this a little bit, but after you've gone through your personal network, you need to start looking for more donors elsewhere. I would say and you've talked to your allies, endorsing orgs, anything like that to help you fundraise. It's time to start looking at similar candidates and causes and PACs and where they have raised money. Open secrets, follow the money, the FEC, all of these are used for researching people and to see like where they've given money. As shown on the call sheet, like you want to get the key pieces of info: name, address, phone numbers, home and work, occupation and employer, and giving history. And if you're doing a lot of research for more donors, you want to keep a list of what you're looking at, so you're not duplicating your research efforts. So a list of your lists. So like if you're a progressive running in Rhode Island, you might be looking at donors to renew back candidates. You might look at donors to Bernie Sanders in New England. You might look at people who live in New England but gave to like Stacey Abrams, and just keeping a list of all of that so you don't waste time and you can remember where you've been researching. All right, so events, one of my favorite ways to raise money. How do we do it? How do we make it good? Number one, get it scheduled with your hosts. Where and when is this going to be? Is it at someone's home? That's preferable. Is it at a venue? Less preferable, but still fine. You want to get people committed to your event. It is always easier to raise money at an event with hosts than it is to raise money at an event without hosts. So asking people, will you host this event and invite your network? is basically an event ask. And then staying in touch with them and helping them through the process. So like drafting an invite for them, making an ActBlue page where they can send people to donate, giving them updates on their goals to keep them motivated. Like, hey, we have 25 RSVPs. We've brought in $5,000. This event's going really well. Keep it up. Following up, being proactive, watching out for red flags, like if they're not responding to you, if they're saying, I don't want us to ask anyone for money, just want it to be a meet and greet. Like these are all sort of trains going off the tracks, warning signs, and you want to course correct. So always good on the front end to be explicit, make sure there's goals, make sure you're making a clear ask. Oh, explicit keywords and ways you make a clear ask. Yes. There'll be more on making a good ask, but essentially, a couple things. Number one, an ask is a question. It is not a statement. Example, statement. It would be great if you could donate. It'd be great if I was a professional basketball player. Question, will you donate? And after the question is a long pause. So some keywords are donate, will you, can you, contribute, support, always ends with a question mark, and always has a pause afterwards where you wait for an answer. So will you donate $25 to support my campaign? Chew some gum, whatever you gotta do. Don't be the first one to speak after you make the ask. Yeah, that's a great one. Can I count on your support with a donation of $25, $50, $100? That is probably the most common ask line is, can I count on your support? There's the pause. A lot of people will talk themselves out of the donation. So can I count on you to donate? I totally understand if you can't. It's a busy time of year. All the kids are going back to school. You know what? Don't even worry about it. I'll just hop off the phone. Don't talk yourself out of the donation. Just ask. Let them say yes or no. All right. So yeah, very long. Okay, let's keep going here. Okay, if you're doing a lot of events, and you're doing fairly complex ones like multiple co-hosts, big goals, that kind of thing, I think it's important to have like some tasks and the dates laid out in a spreadsheet so you can keep it all organized. This is one example of a tracker for an event. So across the top, it has the different events laid out and when they are. So like birthday fundraiser, March 31st, local lawyers event, April 12th. It has the goal. It has, which staffer's handling it. And then it has the things you want to complete each week leading up to the event. So have we sat with the hosts and talked about their networks? Have we created a donation page? Do we have a draft invite? Is the venue confirmed? Is it double confirmed? Are we sending weekly updates to the hosts on their progress to keep them motivated? And then like in the final day or two, we want to make sure that we go through the run of show and there's a memo if there's like multiple speakers or people doing various things, like who's doing what and when. So we're all on the same page about the flow. All right. Okay. Oh, great question in the chat from Spencer. Do you think there's a difference between donate and contribute? Donate makes me think of a charity versus contribute is more participatory. Some people have no opinion on this. I have a strong opinion, but I don't pretend to know everything at all. I much prefer contribute. Oh, okay. Well, great question from someone. I prefer contribute. I think we're all building a movement here, and you contribute to a movement. And people who contribute to a movement are contributors. Donation, that sounds less like you're being a part of making change and a little more like you're just giving to a charity. I agree. So yeah, I much prefer contribute, and I think it contribute also leads to the word contribution, which is very financial, and you can make a very specific ask. So like, can you contribute $25? Can we count on you for a contribution of $50, etc. That's my preference. I think either works fine. But so I wouldn't necessarily flag anything else as good or bad. The one thing I would say is just being explicit. Like I certainly have heard people say as they're asked, hey, can I count on your support? The person says, of course, I look forward to voting for you. A lot of people, it'll be their first donation if they're not necessarily political, so they don't know that can I count on your support means, can you make a donation? So can I count on your support with a donation, with a contribution? Just being explicit and clear is the most helpful. Right, yeah, it can also mean time, like, sure, I'm happy to support you as a volunteer, etc. So just want to make sure that people know we're calling for money. All right, okay, finance plan. If you're raising and spending many dollars, it is good to have a plan for how you're going to raise it and how you're going to spend it. For the most part, this is just taking into account the raising. The spending would be in a budget, which I'm sure is covered in a separate session. So just thinking through all the things we've learned, like call time, events, finance committee, whatever, break it up into buckets. Think about your average contribution. So if you've probably already started calling people, people in your network are giving $100, roughly maybe you've got $100 average. You can project out like, gee, I've got 500 people left to call. I'll probably get half of them to say yes. That's 250 people. If they're giving an average of $100, that's what? $25,000. Sorry, it's late. So that is sort of the essence of making a finance plan. And the same goes for events. Like, did you raise $500 at a house party? How many of those do you think you can get on the books in the next quarter? And putting it all into a plan, taking it to the spreadsheet, which is something that looks a little like this. So you'll see across the top in column B, we have a goal for the whole year. And then in E, F, and G, we have like goal and actual and the difference for just like one quarter. And then further out, it's like quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. But going up and down, you have the various channels. So yeah, go back to the previous slide. Oops. So in the spreadsheet, you want to have all your various channels laid out left to right. So email, meetings, mail, PAC. This is for I think, congressional or Senate campaign. So in this case, like lots of events on the books in different places, different hosts, different dates. I think we were planning on, we had a finance committee with a pretty aggressive goal, 200,000 for the year. this person had a lot of labor support, so we got quite a bit in labor money. And then up above, there's actually, I couldn't fit everything on the screen, but there's a call time line. So it had, I think like, let's say 400, I think about $1,000 for call time for the year based on like what we'd been raising per hour and per week, projected out for the year. So this is a finance plan, and you go back weekly and look at, okay, let's pull up the Act Blue page for the Shenandoah event. We raised, let's say $18,000, plug it in at the end of the week, you would see a difference of $2,000. So just tracking like your projected to actual is helpful. Okie doke. Uh-oh. Things are not going well. We're not raising enough money. What campaign is ever raising enough money? Don't panic. It'll be okay. As long as you are trying hard, taking detailed notes, staying organized, keep moving forward, you will do fine. It's important to make sure that from the beginning, your goals are realistic. It's a little better to set goals that you know you will hit than set goals you don't think you will hit at the beginning. You will feel better. Take a beat, pause, ask yourself, where's the money coming from? Where's it not coming from? Are you doing call time? Are people saying yes? Do you have events on the books? Have you sent an email? Is money coming in from these channels? Do an assessment. What is going well? What's not? Have you asked people enough times? Are you following up with them? Like on the call sheet we looked at earlier, we called that donor 6 times before they gave the first time, and then we called, I think, 10 times before they gave the second time. So sometimes it just takes a lot of asking. And a lot of asking will show people that you're persistent, you're committed, you believe in what you're doing. And sometimes they'll give just to get you out of their hair, which is fine. We'll take it. If you are struggling to find people to do some of the higher order things like host an event or get them on the phone, like you can look at your Facebook list and say, hey, can I add you to my email list? Go through your email list. Maybe there are people you just need to find a phone number for that you haven't talked to in a while, and you can give them a call and get some money out of them. People who have given over the phone, those are great people to ask to host an event. Like if they have given to you over the phone, they probably already know who you are. They know what you're about, why you're running, what you're running for. They support you. It's not a huge jump to ask them to get a few people together, open up their home, provide some snacks, and invite people over. And then lastly, someone who's done that, you can ask them to make introductions to people who couldn't attend the event, maybe live in a different town, whatever. And then lastly, you can just go back and do it all over. You can do all the same things with your partner, spouse, other family members, people you're close to, your finance committee if you have one. All those people can provide lists, can make introductions, can host an event, etc. Same goes for your allies. Finally, if you're totally out of ideas and you hit a wall, you can give me a call. There's my info. And I think that's the last slide. There's the old 5 circles just to close it out.
Connor, I don't know if you noticed the earlier question. If a host resists, is there a special way to address? That came from Betsy. I'm not sure if she has some more to like expand on that. And then also, what are some ways to deal with red flags that may have arise, like someone wanting to turn it into a meet and greet instead of a fundraiser? That came from Beatrice. So if you need more information there, that's a good one.
Yeah, if a host resists, 1 second. Well, we need to find out why. So I would just ask them, Say, you know, what's your hesitation? A lot of times it is just, it is just that they're uncomfortable or unused to the idea of hosting. So they haven't done it before or whatever. I think reassuring them that you're here to help, tell them it will be okay, helping them through the process. So like, hey, let's sit down together and we can make a list. Like at this point, you will have Rolodex yourself. You know how to go through your phone, go through your Facebook contacts, your LinkedIn, your church directory, whatever. And you can help the person do the same. So a lot of like the roadblocks that I usually see are just people who know you, support you, want to host, but don't know how to get from there to I've hosted an event that raised money. And it really is just breaking it down to like, let's make a list, let's draft the invite together, let's send the invites out, it'll be okay. If there are other reasons, you know, you do want to ask, because like if it's I don't support the campaign anymore, or I'm being approached by the other candidate, or I don't know, I'm uncomfortable because of COVID or something, like those are just need to be addressed sort of individually. And I'm not sure there's like a one size fits all answer there, like maybe just convert it to a Zoom, or maybe they need more co-hosts or something. Like you just probably have to talk it through with them a little bit. Cool. And then the other question was, what was the other question? Oh, the red flags. Yeah. The big one is people who want to turn it into a meet and greet. And the number one reason, the number 1 through 10 reasons for that is they are scared of asking their friends for money, which is fine. No, we're all scared of asking for money. So I think it's important to tell them, look, you know, meet and greets are great, but I have a plan to meet voters, which is, you know, a field program, door-to-door, phone banks, all that. Like what I need from you is to be introduced to people who can donate money. And that is what we need to do here. And just telling them like, I am happy to meet your friends, but this is what we need, basically. So sometimes you got to push on people a little bit. And I think if they're absolutely uncomfortable asking for money, and of course it's good if the host can ask for money in addition to you, just tell them, you know, I'm happy to make the ask at the event. Just if you can tell people that like you're supporting me and you hope if they like what they hear, you will too, that would be helpful. So just getting people primed before an event.
Awesome. Thank you. I will do a final call for questions. If anyone has a question, pull yourself off mute, drop it in the chat, anything above. And with that, seeing nothing, not waiting nearly as long as I should after a question, I will say thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Connor. Oh, Bernard's got a hand up. I think there is one last question.
Sure.
He knows how to sneak on in there. Take it away, Bernard.
I didn't want to disappoint you. But how early in the campaign should you be beginning your planning for fundraising?
At the very beginning. Yep. As soon as you can. I mean, sometimes, yeah, yesterday, but the next best time to do it is now.
Yeah.
So never too early. If you filed your paperwork, do it now. Even if you have not yet filed, like start to do the prep work so you can get an early jump. If you know, if your election is in November and you launch January 1st, you can go back to the same people 2 or 3 times. There will always be exciting updates on the campaign, like you've had a forum, one of your opponents dropped out, always things you can update people on and go back to them every couple months. So start early, ask often.
Awesome. And with that, thank you. Great way to end the session tonight, I think, is to get that going and start early, ask often. Thank you so much, Connor. Everyone that is here tonight, you will be getting a recording of this, as well as I'll pass along Connor's email and information. And all of that being said, everyone have an absolutely wonderful night. And let's have a Go Fight Win on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Go fight,
Go
win.
fight, win.
Yes. Spencer's going to be so proud I remember to do that. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
And now.
See ya.
Good night.